Hello? I'm the true teller. If you're here tonight, you're probably ready to drift away from the noise of your day. To let go of the thoughts that won't quiet down. To let your mind settle into something deeper. Something slower. Something older. So get comfortable. Take a slow breath in and out. And let me tell you a story that begins with something ordinary. A job application. But ends somewhere far beneath the floorboards of memory. In a place called Evermere. I wasn't looking for a job, not really. Not one like this. My days were filled with nothing in particular. Odd jobs. Long walks. Hours in front of the computer with no purpose, scrolling feeds that didn't feed me anything. I was surviving, sure. But not quite alive. Then the email arrived. The subject line was vague. Night position available, competitive pay, immediate start. I almost deleted it. I get spam like that all the time. But something made me open it. No logo. No official header. Just plain text. Position, night archivist. Location, Evermere Psychiatric Hospital. Hours, 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Pay, generous. Requirements, discretion, calm temperament, punctuality. Notes, on-site housing available. Do not bring guests. Do not ask about the West Wing. Begin tonight, if able. It made no sense. I didn't remember applying for anything. I'd never even heard of Evermere. But the name echoed somewhere inside me. Like a place I had once known in a dream. Or a nightmare. Still. I clicked apply. The screen flickered black, then returned to my desktop. No confirmation. No next steps. I assumed it was a glitch and went to bed. At 3:13 a.m., my phone rang. Not a number I recognized. Not even a full number. Just 4 digits, 1313. I let it ring. The voicemail it left was only 3 words, spoken by a woman's voice in a tone as soft and dry as dust. We're expecting you. The next night, something pulled me there. But I found myself dressed, in my car, following vague directions scribbled on a notepad I didn't remember writing on. Take the old coastal road, it said. Left at the rusted sign. Past the White House with no windows. I drove. The road narrowed. Trees thickened. My GPS died. The hospital appeared like a smudge on the landscape. 4 stories tall. Old stone. Ivy-covered walls that shimmered wetly in the mist. No lights. No sign. Just a wrought iron gate with one side pushed slightly open. I left the engine running. I almost left. But then, the gate creaked wider on its own. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Welcome. Inside, the air was cold. Not hospital cold, not sterile. More like cellar cold. Earth cold. Cold from beneath. The lobby was high-ceilinged, with long marble floors and heavy velvet curtains, dusty and unmoving. Faint lights flickered high above, but their source wasn't obvious. And in the center of it all stood a desk. Behind it, a woman sat in complete stillness. She looked as though she had always been there. Wearing a gray nurse's uniform. No logo. No name badge. Just a pin that read, Matron. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she nodded once and said, You're the archivist. Follow me. Quickly. The air is thin tonight. She walked fast despite her age, leading me through long corridors that twisted in directions I couldn't track. Left, left again, down a narrow stairwell lit by old wall sconces. Then into a sub-basement, where everything smelled faintly of vinegar and paper rot. Finally, she stopped in front of a door marked Room B3. This is your office. You'll find records to digitize. Some are fragile. Some are sensitive. Be respectful. She turned away. If you hear knocking from the far wall, do not answer. That wing is sealed. Has been for years. You'll know if you've wandered too far. And then, she was gone. The room was simple. A desk. A stack of files. A low-humming PC that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1990s. There was no Wi-Fi. No cell signal. Just silence and the distant sound of water dripping somewhere above. I sat and opened the first file. A patient record. 1956, name redacted. Diagnosis, dissociative episodes, sleepwalking, religious delusions. Notes, patient insists hospital has more flaws than blueprints suggest. Draws maps of shadow wings. Has carved spirals into bedposts. Refuses to sleep in the dark. Odd, but not unheard of for old mental health records. I logged the data and moved to the next. They got stranger as the night went on. Entries with no dates. Photos clipped into corners, faces blurred or scratched out. One record typed entirely in mirror writing. And then, just after 3 a.m., I found a folder thicker than the rest. Inside was only one page, handwritten in shaky cursive, West Wing still breathes. Sounds like wind. But it speaks. Door opens from the inside now. There was no patient number. No doctor listed. Just a stamped seal at the bottom, Evermere, Ward X. But there was no Ward X on the map. No West Wing either. And then I heard it. A knock. 3 slow knocks from the far wall. Not the door. The wall. I froze. Everything the matron said flooded back. If you hear knocking, do not answer. The knock came again. Softer this time. Almost hesitant. I whispered to myself. It's just the pipes. Just the building settling. But deep down, I knew better. Because the air had changed. It wasn't just cold. It was moving. Like something had entered the room. Something unseen. Something that remembered the way in. You get used to silence when you work nights. But this silence wasn't empty. It felt occupied. Like something in the dark was listening, or watching, or waiting. I stayed at my desk, unmoving. Even my breathing felt too loud. The knocks had stopped. But the sense of being observed didn't. There were no cameras in the room. I checked when I arrived. No vents. No mirrors. And yet, the back of my neck tingled. The air, somehow, smelled like seawater. Salt and rust and something else, something organic and old. I told myself it was nothing. That the night shift plays tricks on your brain. But when I turned back to the stack of files, the top folder had changed. It wasn't the one I left there. This folder was wrapped in twine. A tag dangled from it, written in faded fountain pen ink, "Do not open after 3:13 a.m." I looked at the clock on the wall. 3:12, my heart thumped, quietly, but hard enough to feel behind my ribs. I could wait. I should have. But some part of me wanted to see. Just a quick look. I untied the twine. Inside was a single Polaroid. An old hospital hallway, dimly lit, narrow. Doors on each side. No signage. Just flickering fluorescent tubes. Something about it felt wrong. I'd seen plenty of corridors in the building already. But this one was different. Not just old, displaced. Behind the photo, a page. Typed in courier font. This corridor does not exist. It appears only under certain conditions, cold. Silence. 3:13 a.m. It begins behind the south wall of archive room B3. Never follow it if the lights flicker. Never go alone. If you hear your name whispered, do not answer. It's not calling you. It's remembering you. W. I put the photo down slowly. The clock ticked to 3:13 a.m. And the light overhead flickered. The back wall of the room, the same one the knocks had come from, looked different now. Not visually. Not exactly. But there was a feeling. Like something beyond it had taken a breath. Like it had become less a wall, and more a door. I stood up. Against my better judgment. Against the warnings. And I approached the far wall. It was smooth concrete. But colder than before. Damp. I pressed my palm against it. And heard something shift. A click. A line appeared, running from floor to ceiling. Not a crack. A seam. And with a low groan, the wall began to open. It slid aside slowly, revealing a narrow corridor. No brighter than the one in the Polaroid. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly pale glow. The floor tiles were damp. Moisture ran in thin lines down the walls. And the air? The air was impossible. It smelled of salt and iron. And time. I should have gone back. Should have locked the door and called it a night. But something in me leaned forward. Like gravity. I stepped in. The door slid shut behind me with a sound like breath. The corridor ahead was longer than it should have been. Longer than the dimensions of the hospital allowed. It stretched ahead, then turned left sharply. No windows. No signage. Just numbered doors, not in sequence. One read 317B. Another, just E. They looked unlabeled, forgotten. But each had a small slot at eye level. Like observation doors in old asylums. I paused at the first door. The slot was closed. But I thought I heard something inside. Not movement. Not breathing. A scratching. Rhythmic. Soft. Like a fingernail across wet paper. I moved on. At the second door, the slot was open. I shouldn't have looked. But I did. Inside was a chair. Just a chair. Old. Metal. Bolted to the floor. And hanging above it, from a hook on the ceiling, was a single straitjacket. Still wet. I stepped back. The lights above buzzed again. And then, something else. A whisper. Not a voice. More like a memory of one. Not loud. But familiar. You were here once before. I turned. No one behind me. No footsteps. Just the corridor. Just me. And the feeling that I had passed this same door before. Even though I hadn't. The hallway curved slightly. Then curved more. Until I was no longer sure what direction I was facing. The lights ahead dimmed. And for a moment, I thought I saw something, no, someone, at the far end of the hall. Not moving. Just standing. Face indistinct. Hands by their sides. Wearing the same uniform I'd seen in the old patient photos. White. Buttoned at the throat. I blinked. And they were gone. I turned back toward the wall I came through. But the corridor had changed. There was no wall. Only more hallway. The doors looked older now. Some were warped with moisture. Others slightly ajar. And somewhere far off, I heard the slow, metallic sound of a cart being pushed across tile. The kind nurses used to serve food. Or medicine. But the sound was wrong. Too slow. Too heavy. Dragging something behind it. I pressed forward. I told myself I'd find the way back. But I didn't believe it. Eventually, the corridor widened into a room. Octagonal. High ceiling. Pipes running along the edges. In the center, a table. And on the table, a map. Old. Yellowed. Torn. It showed the hospital, but larger. With wings I'd never seen. Stairwells that spiraled down instead of up. and a red circle around something labeled level -1, the quiet ward. The map began to flicker under the light, and I saw another hand move across it. Not mine. Another person, standing beside me. For a heartbeat. Then gone. A low groan echoed through the corridor behind me, and I realized the lights were dimming. One by one. Moving toward me. I grabbed the map and ran. The hallway pulsed with a pressure behind me, like air being pulled into a vacuum. Doors slammed as I passed them. And ahead, just barely, I saw it, the seam. The wall. Still there. I reached it and slammed my palm against the concrete. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. Then, a voice. Behind me. You shouldn't have left. I didn't turn. The wall opened. I stepped through. And it closed again, like it had never been there. I was back in room B3. Everything was where it had been. The stack of files. The humming PC. The ticking clock. Except, it was no longer 3:13 a.m. It was 5:47. 2.5 hours had passed. And I remembered all of it. Every step. Every whisper. Every impossible corridor. But the wall? It looked ordinary. Concrete. Unmarked. Like it had never opened. Like it never could. But when I checked my pocket, the map was still there. Crumpled. Damp. Marked in red. And ahead, just barely, I saw it, the seam. The wall. Still there. I reached it and slammed my palm against the concrete. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. Then, a voice. Behind me. You shouldn't have left. I didn't turn. The wall opened. I stepped through. And it closed again, like it had never been there. I was back in room B3. Everything was where it had been. The stack of files. The humming PC. The ticking clock. Except, it was no longer 3:13 a.m. It was 5:47. 2.5 hours had passed. And I remembered all of it. Every step. Every whisper. Every impossible corridor. But the wall? It looked ordinary. Concrete. Unmarked. Like it had never opened. Like it never could. But when I checked my pocket, the map was still there. Crumpled. Damp. Marked in red. The last known entry in his file was dated 1958. Patient continues to wander outside assigned room at night. Leaves footprints. No shoes. No mud. Water consistent with seawater. Refuses to speak. Staff instructed not to engage. Ward transfer requested, denied. Status, undetermined. That was it. Nothing else. I stared at the bracelet. The plastic seal was old, cracked slightly, as though it had been handled many times. The name etched into the tag was nearly faded. E. Renner. Ward 4B. I didn't remember seeing a 4B on any of the directories. But something about the file made my skin itch. It didn't feel forgotten. It felt deliberately hidden. I picked up the file and turned toward the door. Something about tonight felt different. Like the hospital had shifted in my absence. The hallways were quieter than usual. Even the occasional creaks and groans of the old pipes had gone silent. I passed 3 doors that had always been locked before, open now, revealing dimly lit storage rooms and supply closets full of rusted equipment. It felt like the building was offering me something. Leading me. I followed. Down past the main staircase. Past the east wing where lights never worked. And then, round a corner I swear hadn't existed before, stood a door labeled Ward 4B. The paint was chipped. the frame swollen with age. But the handle turned easily. The door opened with a sigh. Inside was a long row of rooms. Glass windows set into each door. Old style, thick, wired glass, scratched and fogged from the inside. I walked slowly down the corridor. Each room was empty. Beds stripped. Walls peeling. Names on faded cards beside each door, some scratched out. But when I reached the 6th room, I stopped cold. There were footprints. Wet ones. Leading from the bed to the door. Bare feet. Long, narrow. Uneven. They hadn't dried. There was no plumbing in the room. No spill. No reason. Just fresh, wet footprints that stopped at the glass. On the inside. I stepped closer. My breath fogged the window. And that's when I saw it. A smudge on the other side. Not random. It was a handprint. Not pressed hard. Just resting. 5 fingers. Long, thin. Left behind on the inside of the glass. I opened the file again and looked at the photograph. The man in the picture stood the same way. Left hand on the glass. Head slightly tilted. Almost like he was listening. And in that moment, I thought I heard something too. A low, watery voice just beyond the door. Still here, I turned. No one in the corridor. They never let me out. The voice was low, flat, distant, like someone speaking from underwater. I backed away. The glass fogged again. But this time, from the inside. And in the condensation, a message slowly appeared, "Don't follow them down." I ran. Back in the archive room, I locked the door. The bracelet still lay on the desk. Wet now. Even though I'd never opened the seal. Water pooled beneath it, soaking the paper. The photo of Elias Renner had begun to curl. And something was scrawled across the back of it now, something that wasn't there before. In faint, shaky handwriting, "He walks between floors." Not above. Not below. Between. I stared at the walls again. The concrete at the back of the room looked ordinary. But I knew better. It wasn't a wall. Not always. Sometimes, it opened. Sometimes, it invited. And I wondered if it would open again tonight. If I stared long enough. If I listened. Some places breathe when no one's watching. You don't hear it. You feel it. In the way the walls hold air too long. In the way footsteps echo longer than they should. In the way silence becomes crowded. Evermere was breathing now. Not just the building. The space beneath it. And it was calling again. I returned to the archive room with the same routine. 11:03 p.m. Clock ticking faintly. But something had changed. The air smelled strongly of salt water again. Not just damp. It was the scent of an ocean at low tide. Briny. Metallic. Rotting. And the back wall? Already open. No sound. No movement. Just the seam, slid halfway back, revealing the corridor I'd sworn never to enter again. I shouldn't have gone in. But curiosity, or something older, had already taken hold. And the map still sat on my desk. Its red circle glowing faintly in the lamplight. Level -1, the quiet ward. I took the map and stepped through. The hallway greeted me with a hum. Not mechanical. Not electric. It was almost vocal. Like 100 soft voices humming just below hearing. The corridor was the same. But wetter. Condensation ran down the walls. The floor squelched softly with each step. The lights flickered rhythmically, casting long, pulsing shadows that moved when I didn't. Then I saw it, a door I hadn't seen before. Wide, arched, made of iron and carved stone, set into the wall like a mouth. Above it, engraved in an old serif font, stairs TO-1, and beneath that, etched faintly by hand, once entered, cannot be unseen. I stood there for a long time, listening. There were no screams, no sounds of struggle, only whispers, so soft I couldn't tell if they were real or imagined. I opened the door. It groaned like a waking animal, and revealed a stone staircase spiraling downward into darkness. The walls were made of the same damp stone I'd seen before, and carved into each step, symbols. The same shifting shapes I'd seen in old files and elevator panels. Not letters, not numbers, just forms. Unstable, alive. I descended. The deeper I went, the colder it became. My breath came in clouds now. Slow, shallow. The air was dense. Each step felt heavier than the last. The whispers grew louder, not words, not yet, but emotion. Sadness, curiosity, hunger, and something else. Memory. I reached the bottom. The staircase ended at a long hallway carved from the same ancient stone. Torches lined the walls, but they weren't lit. Yet somehow, I could see. A pale green glow pulsed faintly from the tiles beneath my feet, like veins under skin. And along the walls, etched into the rock, "Be quiet. They are sleeping." I moved forward. Doors lined the hallway, each sealed with metal bars. Not cells. Rooms. Not numbered. Labeled only with words: the coffer, the mouthless boy, Dr. R. The one in the mirror, and beside each door, a brass speaker box. Old intercoms. The kind used in wards before wireless systems. I paused at the last door on the left. It read, "Archivist's room," and beneath that, scratched in something dark, "Welcome back." The intercom crackled. I hadn't touched it, but it came alive. And from the speaker, a voice I recognized whispered, "Do you know what they took from us?" I stepped back. But the voice continued. "They buried us down here. Not because we were sick, but because we remembered too much." Static hissed. Then silence. I moved on. The corridor widened again into a circular room. At its center stood a desk, covered in folders. Stacks and stacks of them. Just like mine upstairs. And in the center, one marked with my name. I picked it up. The label read, "Archivist number 47, active." The date of assignment matched the night I arrived. Inside were notes. Typed, handwritten, clipped from typewriters and old hospital logs. Subject responds well to auditory influence. Dreams show high compatibility with spatial layering. Eyes adjust quickly to non-Euclidean geometry. Shows signs of return memory. And then this, circled in red ink, assigned to interface with level -1 residents. Objective, translation. They speak in symbols. He must learn the tongue. I dropped the folder. The torches on the wall flared to life. The flame burned green, casting shadows against the stone. And then, I heard real voices. Not whispers. Voices. Dozens of them. All around the room. Speaking in languages I didn't know. Some sounded human. Others didn't. But one cut through them all. The voice of a woman. Calm. Cold. Familiar. "Archivist. Why have you come so early?" I turned. She stood in the archway. Tall. Thin. Wearing grey. The matron. But not the same. Her eyes were black. Her hands slightly too long. And her shadow moved in the wrong direction. I tried to speak, to explain, to apologize, but she raised a hand. This level is not yours yet. You are not ready for the deeper files. Return now, while you still have your voice. The green flames dimmed, and the shadows leaned in. I felt the cold tighten around me, and the files on the desk began to turn to ash. One by one, including mine. We will speak again, she said. And the room vanished. I woke at my desk. The map lay where I'd left it. The clock read 5:44 a.m. My fingers were wet with ink. Symbols covered my arms, written in my own handwriting. But I didn't remember drawing them. They pulsed faintly in the light, like they were still speaking, trying to be heard, trying to be translated. The lights flickered for the first time just after midnight. Not like before. Not the usual flicker of old fluorescent tubes. This time, it was deeper. The kind of flicker that touches the air. Like the building was holding its breath. And then, the power failed completely. I was in the east corridor when it happened. A part of the hospital I'd only passed through briefly. A long hallway of locked offices and forgotten exam rooms. Everything sealed. Everything quiet. Until now. The hum of electricity vanished. The overhead lights blinked out, one by one. And then the silence hit. Complete. Absolute. I stood in it for what felt like minutes, waiting for the backup generator to kick in. But nothing happened. No flicker. No buzz. Just blackness. Then a click. Somewhere ahead of me. A door opening. The emergency lights finally kicked on. But not in the usual way. They didn't buzz to life all at once. They strobed, slow and rhythmic. One flash every few seconds. In between, total darkness. I turned toward the sound of the door. Nothing there. Just the corridor, bathed in red pulses of light. The kind you see in emergency drills. But this wasn't a drill. Because when the light flashed again, something stood at the end of the hallway. A man. Wearing white. Too still. Too tall. His head tilted slightly, like a broken mannequin. Flash. He was closer. Flash. Gone. Flash. At the door beside me. But when I turned, nothing. Just air. The red light pulsed again, revealing a set of wet footprints where he'd stood. And the door beside me now stood open. Room 12E. A room I was sure had always been sealed. I stepped inside. The air was freezing. The kind of cold that fills your ears, your nose, like being underwater. The emergency light glowed weakly behind me. Enough to make out the contents of the room. A bed. And 4 stand. A cracked mirror above a rusted sink. And across the wall, someone had written something. In thick, black strokes. Don't let it follow the light. The mirror flickered. Only for a moment. But what I saw in that brief glint wasn't me. It was wearing my clothes. But its mouth was open too wide. And its eyes were gone. The lights went out again. No red flash. No hum. Just darkness. And in that darkness, breathing. Close. Just behind my left shoulder. Slow. Wet. Shallow. I didn't turn. I couldn't. My body locked in place. But something touched my back. Just barely. Fingers. Cold and long. Tracing my spine. You shouldn't have looked, it whispered. The voice was me. Exactly me. But it came from behind. And then, the red light returned. And I was alone again. I backed out into the corridor. The walls were wet. Not damp, wet. Water ran down them like sweat. Footprints led away from room 12E, too many to count. All barefoot. All fresh. And they led not down the stairs, but up. To the surgery wing. Which, according to the map I still carried, hadn't been used in over 20 years. But tonight, it was open. The stairwell door groaned when I touched it. And something on the other side breathed in reply. I climbed slowly. The red lights pulsed as I ascended. Every 10 seconds, light. Then dark. Then light again. And in each flash, I saw a little more of the stairwell. More water. Dripping from the railings. Pooling on the steps. And in one brief flash, a face. Pressed against the glass window of the door above me. Mouth open. Not screaming. Just waiting. When I reached the landing, the door opened before I touched it. As if someone on the other side had been waiting to let me in. The surgery wing looked untouched. Dust covered the floors. But only some of them. Most of the hallways were clean. Fresh footprints ran in every direction. Some barefoot. Some wearing patient slippers. Some not human. I moved through the hallway slowly. Emergency lights blinked on in each room I passed. Some showed gurneys. Others, old surgical tools laid out like museum exhibits. And in one room, a tape recorder sat on the floor. Still running. I pressed play. Static. Then a voice, patient 19C. Unresponsive. Physical body present. Vital signs normal. But soul appears fragmented. A pause. Then another voice. Female. Whispering. He went too far down. The elevator didn't stop. He saw what's beneath the basement. Then static again. And behind me, another flash of light. And in it, a shadow. Not mine. The recorder snapped off on its own. The emergency lights flickered, faster now. Like a strobe. And in those pulses, I saw the hallway shift. Doors moved. Windows vanished. The floor became damp again. And every few seconds, I saw them, people. Walking past me. Wearing gowns. Eyes closed. Mouths sewn shut. They walked in a line. Never speaking. Never seeing. Each holding something glowing in their hands. A piece of paper. With my name written on it. The strobing light slowed again. And I was alone. But the hallway had changed. I wasn't in the surgery wing anymore. I was somewhere else. The walls were stone. Not tile. And ahead of me, carved above a wooden archway, welcome to level -2. I turned back. But the door behind me was gone. Only wall. No handle. No seams. No stairs. And in the silence, I heard it again, whispers. But now they were chanting. Low and steady. And my name was part of it. Archivist. 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 The word became a rhythm. A heartbeat. And then I saw them. Dozens of them. Standing in the darkness just beyond the next door. Not moving. Just watching. Waiting for me to enter. The hallway before me had no lights. Only darkness. But not empty. It pulsed with sound. Not loud, not screaming, but layered. Like 1,000 whispers buried under the floor, repeating and folding into each other until they became a single weight pressing against my skull. I stepped through the archway. The door behind me vanished. And the air changed. It became thick. The silence here wasn't still. It was watching. The corridor led into what might have once been a ward. But not like any I'd seen before. The beds weren't lined up neatly. They were stacked. Not on purpose, more like they'd been piled in panic, thrown into corners, upturned, tangled in 4 tubes and oxygen lines. Monitors hung from the ceiling by exposed wires, swinging softly, as if stirred by unseen breath. And across the walls, every wall, tape recorders. Hundreds of them. Old. Cracked. Some open, some sealed. Each labeled with dates. Names. Numbers. But no tapes. Only the sound. A speaker clicked on as I passed. He never left. Another one answered, across the room. She kept walking downward. Then another, behind me. They said the stairwell ends at -3, but they lied. The words weren't conversations. They were confessions. Recordings. Trapped voices, playing back on endless loop. And some said my name. The archivist watches but does not listen. He was chosen by the building. He dreamed of the wrong door. I turned a corner. A new room. Larger. Dome-shaped. The ceiling rose above me in a wide arch, and in the center, a massive reel-to-reel recorder, as tall as a man. Its wheels turned slowly, feeding a blank tape through ghostly fingers. And around it stood 3 figures. Unmoving. Faces bandaged. Hands bound. They were listening. Each with an earpiece wired to the machine. Their heads tilted slightly, like they were being hypnotized. Or fed something they could no longer resist. One of them turned. He had no eyes. Just stitched skin. He opened his mouth. Not to speak. To release. From deep in his throat, a voice spilled out, not his own. A woman's voice. Old. Terrified. I'm still in the walls. Don't leave me here. Then another figure turned. A second mouth opened. This one younger. Male. They said I'd be transferred. I never was. The lights went out and the floor fell away. Their voices didn't match their bodies. They were recordings. Worn down. Replayed. I backed away, heart pounding, but no sound came from my body. Not my breath. Not my footsteps. This level was stealing my own sound now. Silencing me. Replacing me with recordings. I passed a wall of speakers. One played a familiar voice. I don't remember writing this. It was me. My voice. From the archive room. From nights I barely remembered. The recorder repeated the words in loops, distorting them slowly. Don't remember, writing this, remember, don't, until the words weren't mine anymore. Just sound. Then I saw it. At the back of the infirmary, a door made of glass. Frosted. Glowing. Etched across the surface, backward, sound carries what memory cannot. I stepped through. Inside was silence. Real silence. A padded room. Walls covered in soft grey material. No angles. No corners. At the center, a single hospital bed. Occupied. A person lay perfectly still beneath crisp white sheets. Wires trailed from their skull, leading to an ancient machine beside the bed. And on the floor next to it, a notebook. I picked it up. The handwriting was mine. They recorded everything. Every voice that ever passed through Evermere is stored here. Even the ones that weren't alive. They are trying to rebuild memory. Using sound. But the echoes, they get louder. They change. They become. I don't know how long I've been here. I think I may have volunteered. Or maybe. I was always here. I looked at the person in the bed. The more I stared, the more familiar the shape became. The outline of the shoulders. The curve of the chin. Even beneath the bandages, it was me. Sleeping. Still. and the machine beside the bed was recording. The needle jumped slightly, and from a speaker above it came a quiet phrase, "He is beginning to understand." The lights flickered. A single red bulb came on, and I saw the far wall again. This time, with a mirror. It had been hidden before, but now I could see it. The reflection was not the room. It was another room. Same layout. Same bed. Same machine. But the figure in the bed was awake. And smiling. At me. I ran. The whispers chased me. No longer fragmented. Now full. Voices begging. Threatening. Pleading. Help me remember. Take my name. Become my echo. I burst back into the corridor. Doors slammed shut behind me. The walls vibrated with sound. Every tape recorder screeched at once. And somewhere, above me, a bell began to ring. Faint. Distant. The stairwell appeared again. Its spiral waited. Leading up. Back toward floors I remembered. Back toward silence. But as I ascended, each step spoke. No voice. Just emotion. Terror. Longing. Regret. Each embedded in the stone. Until finally, I passed through a door marked Archive Level 0 and the sound stopped. I collapsed at the desk. Hands shaking. The lamp was still on. My original folder lay open. Empty now. The pages gone. Only a single tape sat inside. Unlabeled. I pressed play. And from the speaker came only one sentence, "We are what's left behind." It was quiet after that. For almost 3 nights. The whispers stopped. The tape stopped. Even the shadows kept to themselves. And I let myself believe, for a while, that it was over. That maybe I had been imagining things. That exhaustion and isolation had blurred the lines too far. But then the elevator changed. It was 2:47 a.m. when I noticed it. The brass doors slid open behind me. On their own. I hadn't pressed the button. No one had. But there it stood. Waiting. The interior exactly as I remembered, wood-paneled walls. Old, scuffed brass buttons. A mirror that didn't quite reflect what it should. Only this time, the panel looked wrong. Where there had always been buttons labeled 1 through 8, there was now a 9th. Unmarked. Polished black. No number. No flaw. Just a dark, perfect circle. Almost wet looking. I should have walked away. I told myself I would. But my feet were already moving. And as I stepped inside, the door whispered shut behind me. No chime. No announcement. The lights inside dimmed to a faint amber. And the floor button pulsed softly beneath my fingertip. I pressed it. The elevator didn't rise. Or descend. It moved sideways. Or backward. Or something else. The numbers on the panel spun rapidly. Then stopped. A soft ding. The doors opened. And the floor beyond was not part of any hospital. It looked ancient. Stone. Worn smooth. Veined with glowing cracks of pale blue light. Not electrical. Not artificial. The air was thick with moisture. The kind you feel in deep caves or forgotten wells. And just beyond the threshold, a hallway lined with pillars. And carvings. Thousands of them. But not words. Faces. All carved into the stone. Mouths open. Eyes closed. Each one screaming without sound. And in the center of the floor, between the pillars, a spiral staircase descended into darkness. A sign was bolted above it. Metal. Blackened by heat. Etched into its surface, final floor, no return. I stood there for a long time. The elevator doors behind me still open. Still offering an exit. But I didn't step back in, because I recognized one of the faces on the wall. Mine. Carved perfectly in stone. Its mouth open. Its eyes gone. And beneath it, scratched hastily, 47th Archivist. Still searching. I descended. The staircase narrowed as I moved. Walls closed in. Symbols flickered in and out of view like oil on water. The air grew thicker, but not colder. It was warm now. Alive. Like I was being swallowed. And at the bottom, a room. Circular. Massive. At its center, a pool. Black as night. Still. Reflective. And suspended above it, anchored by wires and bone, was a single object. A key. Carved from the same stone as the hospital walls. Etched with symbols that shifted when I stared. And beside the pool stood 3 figures. They were not people. Not anymore. Tall. Thin. Faces blurred and in motion. Like the memory of a person more than the thing itself. They turned to me. And spoke. All at once. All with my voice. You've heard them all. You've walked the hidden halls. You've seen the sleepers. Now you must choose. The pool shimmered. And for the first time, I saw its depth. Not water. Reflections. 1,000 rooms. 1,000 faces. All watching. All waiting. The central figure stepped forward. Its face flickered with my features. If you leave now, you will forget. You will wake at your desk. The reports will be filed. The floors will be clean. You will live. Another figure stepped forward. Her voice matched the matron's. But if you take the key, you will become a permanent archivist. One who remembers. One who guides. You will live in the spaces between floors. In the whispers. In the walls. I looked at the key. It pulsed slowly. Not threatening. Not demanding. Just waiting. Behind me, the elevator door appeared again. Glowing faintly. 2 exits. 1 forward. 1 safe. I reached for the key. The figures did not stop me. They only whispered together, "Welcome home." The moment I touched it, the world turned inside out. The walls folded like pages. The pool erupted into light. And I was no longer standing. I was floating. Falling. Seeing every room I'd passed. Every corridor. Every whisper. The voices filled me. Became me. Every forgotten patient. Every misplaced file. Every negative flaw. All of it, part of me now. I woke up at my desk. The lamp still warm. The clock read 6:01 a.m. And in my lap, the stone key. Still warm. Still shifting. My folder now bore a new title, Concierge Negative Levels Division, and next to it, a map. New. Vast. With more circles than before. Each one labeled, Floor -3. Floor -4. Flooded ward. The Mirror Bridge. Room 000. The Returner's Wing. All places that don't exist. Yet now, I remember them all. And every night, at 2:47 a.m., I hear the elevator return. And someone always needs a guide. It's quiet again. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of acceptance. The kind that comes after the storm. After the voices fade. After the last door clicks shut. I sit now in the dim glow of the archive lamp. A soft amber halo circles the desk. And beyond it, the dark waits patiently. It no longer frightens me. Because I understand it now. This place. This hospital. This machine of memory and forgetting. It doesn't want to hurt you. It only wants to be remembered. The staff still comes and goes. Doctors. Nurses, janitors, they pass through the same doors I once did, smile in the same hallways, forget the same things, but they don't see what I see now. The walls shift slightly when no one's looking. The elevator sometimes pauses on floors that don't exist. The intercom crackles with voices that were never hired. And late at night, when all is still, I walk the negative levels. There's peace in it. A strange peace. Knowing I don't need to understand everything. I just need to keep watch. To listen. To guide. I've learned their names. The ones who never left. The ones trapped in rooms folded between dimensions. The patients whose charts were never filed. The nurses whose final rounds led them downward instead of out. The visitors who took the wrong corridor and vanished between minutes. They are not alone. Not anymore. Because I'm here. Sometimes, new guests arrive. They don't know why they are here. A delivery driver who falls asleep in his van in the wrong lot. A woman who wakes in a recovery room she doesn't remember entering. A child who wanders from the lobby into a hallway that shouldn't be there. They always ask the same thing, where am I? And I always say, you're in the part that remembers what the rest forgets. Then I help them find their way. Sometimes back to their floor. Sometimes, further down. I don't sleep much anymore. Not in the usual way. Sleep is different when the mind has no floor beneath it. I drift. Between levels. Between memories. I hear the laughter of the old nurse's break room. The crying in the long-closed children's ward. The echo of the last elevator chime before the descent begins. And sometimes, when the hospital forgets a room, I remember it. And go to check. To light a candle. To make sure it hasn't been fully erased. The stone key stays with me now. I wear it on a cord around my neck. It's warm to the touch when someone new arrives. Cold when they leave. It never speaks. But it knows. And sometimes, when I stare too long at the brass plate on my desk, the letters shift. One night it said, archivist. Another night it said, witness. Last night it said, door. I don't know how long I've been here. Days still come. Sunlight still paints the Atlantic. But time doesn't feel the same. Not in this wing. Not in these levels. I've stopped trying to count the floors. There are always more. Some open only once. Some loop. Some, waiting for you. There is one hallway I haven't entered yet. At the very bottom. No name. No number. Just a sound. Like breathing. Like water. Like memory scraping against stone. I stand before it sometimes. I never walk through. Not yet. Because there are still people above who need help getting back. And as long as they arrive, I'll stay here. Lamp lit. Chair waiting. File folder open. Because that's the oath. The archivist doesn't forget. The archivist remembers, so that you don't have to. And when your hallway turns cold, when the elevator takes a little too long, when your name appears on a chart you don't remember signing, I'll be there. To guide you. To hold the door. To whisper, this way, please. You're not lost. Not really. Not here. You have reached the end of your journey. Sleep well, if you can. Thank you so.